Say yes to mom's dress. 3 brides share how they reinterpreted family heirloom gowns for their own weddings. The notion of walking down the aisle in your mother's wedding dress is undeniably romantic. Yet translating that sentiment into reality often proves complicated. Silhouettes evolve, fabrics age, and fit rarely aligns. To bridge the gap, many brides turn to tailors who can give heirloom dresses new life and, more often, an entirely new look. 3 brides tell G&G how they repurposed their mother's, and in one case, grandmother's gown to great effect. Courtney Knight, ceremony, Kiawah Island River Course Clubhouse in Johns Island, South Carolina. Tailor, green and blue studio in Washington, D.C. As an only child, Courtney Knight is especially close to her mother and wanted to honor her on her wedding day on Kiawah Island in June 2025. That meant finding a way to weave her mother's gown into the celebration. It was in really good shape, Knight recalls. But the dress itself was very Princess Diana, beautiful, just not something I'd ever wear as my actual wedding dress. I thought it would be perfect for a second look. To bring her playful, party-ready vision to life, Knight turned to Green and Blue Studio near her home in Washington, D.C., an alterations and design company known for its bespoke creations. Over 5 fittings, the team at Green and Blue, led by Daniela Martel and Michaela Schwartz, worked through the shortening and shaping of Knight's mother's 1990 cupcake gown. Initially I was thinking of doing a sweetheart neckline, but then I thought, no, let's just do strapless, Knight says. The waistline posed another challenge. Petite in stature, Knight was overwhelmed by the original cut, so the designers carved out a silhouette that flattered her frame. The final reveal, and her mother's delighted surprise at recognizing her gown at the festivities, made it all worth it. On the wedding day there is a moment for pretty much everyone to shine except the mother of the bride, Knight says. The groom's mom had the first dance and my dad walked me down the aisle. My mom didn't have that, but she felt like this gave her her moment. Parker Gavlin, ceremony, First Congregational Church of Rockland in Camden, Maine. Tailor, Lady Heirloom and Gentle Arts Textiles in New Orleans. My mom and I have always expressed love and connection with each other through clothes, says Parker Gavlin, who grew up in Mobile, Alabama, but now calls Charleston, South Carolina, home and was married in 2022 near her grandmother's vacation home in Maine. She has always said that having a little girl was like getting to dress up a doll every day, and even now at 30, I still find myself playing dress up in her closet. Funnily enough, slipping into her mother's wedding gown, a Christos design purchased at Town and Country Bridal in New Orleans in 1993, wasn't part of Gavlin's plan when she and her husband started mapping out the big day. I hadn't seen it in years, so it was very out of sight, out of mind, Gavlin says. But during Christmas 2021, my mom and I were in the kitchen, sipping wine and chatting all things wedding, when she pulled the dress out of storage just for fun for me to try on. Call it fate, but it fit me perfectly. There was just one snag. Decades later, the silk organdy and lace had taken on a yellow hue. Gavlin's grandmother urged her to consult Lady Heirloom and Gentle Arts Textiles in New Orleans, founded by Bryson Lee Reveille and now owned by their apprentice, Chelsea Sile. Lee, renowned for restoring delicate lace, gave the dress a careful assessment. Lee explained that while still wearable, the silk organdy was too fragile to be fully restored, but the cotton lace could be restored, Gavlin says. And that's how Gavlin and her mom came up with a brilliant fashion epiphany: remove the bodice and pair it with pants. No other alterations were needed, Gavlin says, and she wore the look to her rehearsal dinner and welcome party at Primo in Rockland the night before the wedding. I love the idea of giving my mom's gown another life outside of the box that it had been packed in for 30 years, Gavlin says. It made the experience so much more personal and meaningful. And who knows, maybe one day I'll get to share that same tradition with my own kids. Kirsten Schofield, ceremony, the Pendennis Club in Louisville, Kentucky. Tailor, Elizabeth Crum Bridal in Louisville. While many brides reach for their mother's gown, Kirsten Schofield, who lives and was married in Louisville last year, had the opportunity to consider her grandmother's 1951 dress. It was originally very Kate Middleton, with a super high collar, lace bodice, and big skirt, plus like a 16-foot cathedral train, Schofield says. It was a capital D dress. But it had already seen more than one transformation. Schofield's aunt and mom had both worn it, and each had added her own touch. In the case of Schofield's mom, that meant the addition of several thousand hand-sewn pearls. Then there was the issue of it being originally made for a 4'10" professional dancer who weighed less than 100 pounds. I'm 5'6" and considered a giant in my family, Schofield says. Enter Elizabeth Crum, owner of Elizabeth Crum Bridal. The first step was deciding what could be salvaged from the 75-year-old gown. I was lucky, it was made from exceptional materials and had been stored in an air-conditioned home, Schofield explains. Even so, the handmade lace had deteriorated and the petticoats were damaged, so some of that was set aside. Over the course of a year and 4 fittings, Crum and Schofield pinned and adjusted, trimmed and refined, until the dress began to take on its new life. My grandmother is 95 and still with us, Schofield says. I wore it to my rehearsal dinner and we buried our bottle of bourbon in it, which was a bottle that Bill Samuels Sr. from Maker's Mark had given my grandfather as a personal gift, so it felt like both grandparents were with me. The most inappropriate dresses brides wore on TLC's Say Yes to the Dress. The truth about TLC's Say Yes to the Dress and its expanded spin-offs proves time and time again that wedding dresses can be just as unique as the brides who wear them, and there are limitless styles and designs for every occasion. The wedding dresses on the show are designed by top designers, including the original, SYTTD, host, Randy Finoli. While some gowns are memorable for their objective aesthetic, others are remembered for all the wrong reasons. Over the years, there have been dresses featured across the Say Yes to the Dress franchise that just don't fit the occasion, the wearer, or the sensibilities of the entourage who accompany brides for support and guidance as they shop. The appeal of Say Yes to the Dress is that it shines the spotlight on unique brides with equally eccentric tastes, such as those who desire gowns in alternative colors and styles that push back on social norms. But even taking into account the diverse venues, ceremony styles, and personal preferences, brides featured on the show sometimes opt to try on dresses that are inappropriate for their big day. A person's career can reflect certain aspects of their personality, skills, and even aesthetic taste, so it isn't surprising that Emily Altomari, who was featured on the first episode of Say Yes to the Dress, Season 10, wanted to find a wedding dress that fell in line with what she regularly wears for work at a nightclub. That being said, it can be difficult to find a dress that toes that line of appropriate for a wedding. Altomari's request for her dream dress was reasonable. She wanted something tight that displayed her figure, since most of what she wore in her profession was form-fitting. Her mother, who was part of her shopping entourage, felt that she should select a princess or ball gown silhouette. Thankfully, the Kleinfeld consultant prioritized Altomari's tastes when she selected the first gown to try on. The dress in question, however, might have taken the nightclub features a bit too far. The slim-fitting satin gown featured a plunging V neckline and was almost totally backless. The literal shining star of the design was the built-in rhinestone-encrusted body jewelry that rested between Altomari's breasts in the front and hung down her back as a counterweight to hold the top of the dress up. Though Altomari seemed enthralled by the sex appeal, her mother deemed it inappropriate for a wedding dress, and they ultimately agreed upon a gown that better suited the occasion while still meeting the bride's expectations for fit and glamour. The pastor's sexy dress. A person's religion can have a considerable impact on their wedding, not only on the ceremony itself but also in terms of what they can and can't wear for the event. This was the case for the bride and pastor, Shondaland Elliott, who was featured on Say Yes to the Dress, Atlanta, in an episode aptly titled, Pastor Princess. Despite the traditionally conservative tendencies of individuals in her position, Elliott stated up front that she was looking for a sexy dress, which shocked both her entourage and the salon consultant. Elliott's family members in attendance voiced some concerns about her preferences, stating that since she is a pastor, she shouldn't wear something too revealing. In her confessional interview, Elliott explained that the members of her entourage are very conservative and closed-minded about how a pastor should look, but she wanted to be true to herself and redefine what a pastor can look like. The second dress she tried on was the showstopper and jaw-dropper that sparked a heated response. It featured a sheer corset bodice that exposed her torso down to her hips. Solid cups and appliques concealed the bust, but aside from the boning structure of the top, the rest of her upper half was much more exposed than her entourage wanted to see. Despite Elliott's positive reaction, the group unanimously rejected the selection on the grounds that it was too inappropriate for a wedding in the church and for an individual of her rank within the institution. The dress that was perfect for Malta but not a good fit for an English church. Depending on the venue of the wedding, a dress style may be a great fit for one occasion but not quite right for another. Such was the case for BFF brides Molly and Jade, who were featured together on an episode of Say Yes to the Dress, UK. The two brides were celebrating their weddings within 2 months of each other and decided to shop together for their respective dresses. Despite the close timelines, the two ceremonies would be entirely different. Jade stated that she wanted her wedding in Malta to feel like one big party, while Molly's church wedding in the English countryside would have a more traditional and glamorous feel. Though the aesthetics of these weddings seemed wildly different at first, there was still some overlap in the dresses they tried on together since the pals expressed a desire for drama and glitzy details. At one point during their appointment, both Molly and Jade wore almost identical gowns that featured a trumpet skirt, low back, side cutouts with sheer paneling, and lace detailing. Luckily, there wasn't a conflict over who would rock the style on their big day. Jade loved the details, and Molly loved it on her friend, but not so much on herself. In the end, Jade said yes to her version of the dress since it embodied all of her aesthetic requirements, and Molly was able to find a gown that was more appropriate for a church wedding. The naked dress. Say Yes to the Dress has featured some fearless brides throughout the years, but few have graced the floor of Kleinfeld with the mission to find a wedding dress that makes them feel practically naked. Season 19 of the show introduced fans to bride Alexis Worth, a woman on a mission searching for shock value on her wedding day. In her confessional interview, Worth explained that she spent so much time and effort learning to embrace and celebrate her body. This journey to self-acceptance led her to want a wedding dress that left little to the imagination. Luckily for Worth, her entourage showed immense support for her search for the sexiest of sexy dresses, but even they weren't fully prepared for what lurked amongst the racks at the famed New York bridal salon. The first dress Worth tried on was a figure-hugging, wide-knit fishnet dress that left a lot of skin exposed. The bodice featured a V neckline that plunged halfway down her torso as well as romantic appliques and rhinestone detailing, but they didn't offer much in the way of coverage. The dress included flesh-toned cups at the bust and a slip starting at the hips to maintain a hint of modesty, but Worth wanted her legs to be visible through the fishnet, so the consultant bunched up the slip fabric at the pelvis to give her an idea of what the dress would look like if the underskirt was removed. The extra naked dress. Alexis Worth's visit to Kleinfeld definitely left fellow shoppers in shock. Though the first dress she tried on proved to be the one, she did try on another gown that was even more scandalous than the sheer fishnet piece she eventually fell in love with. The second naked dress was actually only the overlay of another gown that originally included a liner. The consultant removed it to give Worth the naked effect she wanted. The dress was so sheer that Worth almost didn't walk onto the floor to show her family, stating that she was afraid it was too revealing, even for her. She did ultimately work up the courage to go out, and the shocked stares she left in her wake were intentionally captured by the camera crew. This extra naked dress was entirely made of sheer beige fabric, and the only thing that even partially covered her was strategically placed appliques, but even they didn't help much. Since the gown was meant to include a liner, Worth's entire form was put on display, except for what was covered by the modesty garments she brought with her to the bridal salon. Eye-catching as it was, this option proved that too. The sheer dress that dropped the pastor's jaw. Wedding dress shopping is an experience typically shared between a bride and her close friends and family, but sometimes, other individuals who play an important role in the bride's life are also included in the selection process. In one episode of Say Yes to the Dress, Atlanta, bride Tamaria James brought her pastor along to make sure that the dress she chose was appropriate for her church wedding. James noted that she would like a conservative dress since she and her fiancé are both ministers. Had James's entourage contained only those with similarly conservative tastes, she might have had a less contentious, albeit less interesting, appointment. But as fate would have it, James also invited her fashion-forward sister, who couldn't help but put the bride in a risque dress of her choice. This sister-chosen gown featured a sheer bodice that left James's pastor speechless, and not in a good way. The illusion and sweetheart neckline were innocent enough, but beyond that was corset boning and see-through fabric dotted with delicate beading all the way to the hips. A bustier was added underneath for modesty, but one of the consultants noted that the bodice was sheer, from top to bottom. The gown was vehemently rejected by all parties except the